Now, a look at the cascading effect of poverty on housing in America. Jeffrey Brown has that in this latest addition to the NewsHour bookshelf.
Every year in this country, families are evicted from their homes, not by the tens of thousands or by the hundreds of thousands, but by the millions. That from a new book that explores a huge but little discussed phenomenon in America today. Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City follows the lives of 8 Milwaukee families, black and white. Author Matthew Desmond lived among them in 2008 to 2009. He's a sociologist, a professor at Harvard, and winner of a MacArthur Fellowship last year. And welcome to you.
Thank you.
Eviction is far more prevalent than most people think and far less part of the discussion around poverty in this country. Why do you think that's the case?
I think we focus a lot on jobs. We focus a lot on mass incarceration, welfare reform, but housing has been left out of the debate a little bit. We focused on public housing and we focused on neighborhoods, but the private rental market, where the vast majority of low-income families are living, has been largely overlooked. But here is this market that's taking most of what low-income families are making, that's deciding where they live.
Incredible percentage of income. I mean, that's really striking.
Yes,
70, 80, 90%.
Yeah, that's what I saw when I was living with families in Milwaukee. And we've reached a point today that we know that the majority of low-income renters are paying most of what they have just on rent and to keep the lights on.
I said you followed 8 families. Pick one person to explain sort of how people fall into this and how hard it is to get out of it.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Arlene. You know, Arlene was a single mom. She had 2 young boys. And when I met her, she was living in a pretty rundown apartment in a low-income neighborhood and giving 88% of her income on rent. You know, and she was facing terrible choices. You know, should I buy food or pay the rent? Should I contribute some money to the funeral or pay the rent? And someone like Arlene, eviction isn't necessarily the result of some irresponsibility. It's more inevitable.
They're making some bad choices, but you're showing how it's a kind of almost a vicious cycle, right, of the eviction playing into those choices.
If you're someone like Arlene that's paying almost everything you have to the landlord, a very small divergence can invite an eviction. The book opens with her 14-year-old hitting a car with a snowball, you know, and the man jumping out, kicking in the door, and that causing the landlord to evict the family. You know, was that a bad choice? Eviction isn't just a condition of poverty, it's also a cause of it. It's making things worse.
You show the rawness of what an eviction, I mean, you capture what it looks like.
Yeah.
Describe that. I mean, take an example of what perhaps struck you even the first time you actually saw what that's like to see everything thrown out of the house.
I remember seeing Arlene get evicted in early January, and it was the coldest day on record in Milwaukee. You know, the weathermen said it would be 40 degrees below with the wind chill. And seeing families' things piled on the curb, seeing children forced from the homes, seeing the things taken by movers and put in bonded storage and often kind of taken to the dump when families can't keep up with those payments. It's a violent act, eviction. It can leave a deep mark. And we know it leaves a mark on families that experience it.
It leaves a mark in terms of obviously their budget, but a psychological mark is what you're really documenting.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It affects your spirit. You know, we know that mothers who are evicted 2 years later have higher rates of depression. We know that suicides attributed to evictions and foreclosures doubled between 2005 and 2010. So eviction not only causes you to lose your home and your things and your community, but also has deep effects on the way you see yourself and your mental health.
You also got a couple of landlords to talk to you and let you follow them around.
I thought that was crucial. I thought if I really wanted to understand how housing is causing poverty in America, I needed to get landlords' perspectives. Needed to understand why they evicted me but not you. Needed to understand what makes them tick. And there is a business model at the bottom of the market. And one thing that I found that surprised me was that landlords that are operating in very poor neighborhoods can make a decent profit, an extreme profit in some cases.
The eviction becomes part of the profit, right? I mean, it can be beneficial to them to evict somebody, bring somebody else in, not put much into the actual rental property.
That's right. And for some landlords, eviction is costly and it does take money, but for others, it's part of the business model. You know, and the short answer to that is it's more efficient to evict a family than to keep up payments or to keep up maintenance on your property. And you can do that because families are so strapped, they're giving so much of their income to rent, that if they call a building inspector or report a housing problem, landlords can evict that family not because retaliatory evictions are legal, but because you can at any time evict a family who are behind.
You also write about your own experience of doing this, right? Trying to see how they live, almost trying to live as they live. Did you feel satisfied in the end with what you were able to do? Because you also write in the afterwards of how heartbreaking a lot of this was to see, and even personal toll it took on you.
I learned not only about pain and denial of basic human needs, but I also learned about humor and strength and courage in the face of massive adversity. And it did have an effect on my life personally, but I think the stories that I write about also buoyed me, and left me with a deep sense of thankfulness and just an impression that people that I met in Milwaukee refuse to be reduced to their hardships. There's so much more than that, but the extent of poverty in our cities today is reducing people born for better things.
Let me ask you finally about what should be done. You do at the end advocate for a few things, including creating a kind of universal housing voucher. What would be the single most important thing you'd like to see happen?
I think we as a nation need to figure out, do we believe that housing is a right in this country? And I think we should answer yes, because without stable, decent housing, everything else falls apart. And I think taking this program that's already working, housing vouchers, so instead of paying 88% of your income to rent, Arlene would only pay 30% of her income, and she could take that voucher anywhere she wants, as long as her housing wasn't too expensive or too shoddy. That would fundamentally change the face of poverty in America today. We could make evictions rare again and decrease family homelessness, but only if we as a country kind of accept the fact that housing is central to human flourishing and economic mobility.
All right, the book is Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City. Matthew Desmond, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.